and welcome to the Middle East Forum Speaker Webinar Series. I'm Stacey Roman, and I will be moderating this discussion today. We are pleased to have Nave Dromi, Director of MEF Israel, join us to discuss progress with Israel victory. Nave will speak for 15 minutes and open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type out your question. And with that, I'll turn the discussion over to Nave Dromi.
Thank you, Stacey, and thank you everyone for joining us. I hope I will manage to get you interested in what we did the last year and to review all of our achievements that were very nice. And I have to say that even though COVID-19, for obvious reasons, many times took over the headlines, we managed to do great things that put IVP and the Israel Victory Project in very good and high places. We got to politicians, we got to the public, we arrived to different levels of Israelis, even to the IDF itself. And I will explain by beginning with the first achievement and one of the biggest one of the problems of victory in Israel in the recent decades is that it seems like the IDF itself gave up on the value of victory. Even in the smallest things, it seems like the vocabulary of the former chiefs of staff didn't include words like victory, defeat of the enemy, and in the last year, and especially during the time that Aviv Kochavi is the chief of staff, we are hearing more and more the word victory. We are hearing more about the need to defeat Israel enemies, to show Israel enemies that Israel is strong. And obviously, one of the biggest achievements in this area is the fact that one of the media channels in Israel said that Momentum, in Hebrew we call it Nufa, the program the Chief of Staff Kochavi wrote for the IDF, is being influenced by the Israel Victory Project. Obviously, I see the connection. About 1 year ago, we had the first conference in many years about victory. We had two of the most leading army journalists, two former very high-ranked officers speaking about how does victory looks like and why the IDF doesn't try to gain a victory anymore. So this change from speaking about how the IDF forgot about a victory to seeing how the chief of staff itself putting victory in Momentum in the program that plans the work plan for the IDF for the next years. This is something really incredible. Another achievement we had is in what we called Pay for Slay. The PLO, as you all know, gets funding, and some of this funding, a great amount of this funding goes to prisoners. They call it political prisoners. We call it terrorists. Terrorists that sits in Israeli prison for crimes they did, crimes against Jews, against Israelis, and they receive money. For example, I don't know if you heard about the murder of Esther Horrigan 2 days ago, but if her killer will get caught and will sit in Israel prison, the PLO will pay him a salary, and the salary will go and will grow as the crime is more horrific. So we managed to put a spotlight on this issue that for many years it was very comfortable for Israeli politicians to ignore. They didn't realize that this is something that actually takes us back from gaining victory. And we managed to put spotlight on this issue And we approached to Knesset members and we asked them to bring this to the attention of the legislature. We asked them to push towards doing something about it. And what we saw about last month is that the PLO itself is beginning to hide the fact that they are paying this, and they also said in some Arabic website that they are considering to go back with this funding. We'll see what will happen with that, but definitely was one of the achievements. We worked together with the Palestinian Media Watch organization in order to get it. We approached again to Knesset members, and we also got a lot of media attention, and hopefully we'll see something practical in the soon future. Regarding this last point and the pay for slay and the money that the PLO transferred to the prisoners, one of the events we did was bringing together the Victory Caucus with different Knesset members from all different parties to speak about the lynch in Ramallah that we mentioned 20 years in last October for the lynch in Ramallah. We spoke again about how some of the murderers in this terrible event are still in the Israeli prison, getting a lot of money for the crime they did. We spoke with the Knesset members and we asked them what are they going to do in order to make events like this be something that the Palestinians will be afraid of. Back in the days when it happened, Palestinians were proud of what they did. They were parking in the streets. And we asked the Knesset members, what changed from 20 years ago? Did something change? Did Israel did something that made the Palestinians understand that they will only lose if they will behave this way? We got answers. The Knesset members were with us. Some of them said that Israel failed in the recent years to defeat the Palestinians in different areas. And this conference was also very successful in the way that people spoke about it also afterwards. When we summarize all the views in the different media, in YouTube, in Facebook Live, we also video the conference live in Channel 7. We had more than 1,000 people watching it in the same time. We also got Alex Norgitz. I don't know if you remember the lynch in Ramallah. It was something that affected the perception of so many Israelis. And we got one of the brothers of one of the victims, and his testimony on how the IDF responses to the event and how the government never really punished those terrorists. It was very shocking to many Israelis that saw the conference and didn't know how Israel reacted to this event. And again, it gained a lot of media beside the viewers. And another thing that we did right after this event is trying to push the victory discussion to other areas. For example, Temple Mount. After Israel, the United States and the UAE declared that they're going to sign an agreement, we thought about a creative way to speak about victory. Obviously, everyone talked about how this agreement is a huge step toward the victory of Israel. But we sent a letter, and we also organized at least 9 organizations with us to send it to the UAE. We found someone that will transfer the letter to the regime of the UAE, and we wrote there that a bigger victory of the countries, and a step that will bring Israel toward peace even closer is to show the Palestinians that the way that they treat Jews and other non-Muslims on Temple Mount cannot keep. I mean, it won't last for long. I don't know if you know, but on Temple Mount, Jews don't have the rights like others. Israel itself cooperate with the Waqf and doesn't give very basic rights that other people have on Temple Mount. And we took advantage of these agreements to try and bring victory also to this area. Another big step we did is to cooperate with Miftahi. Miftahi is an organization of former commanders, high-rank commanders in the IDF that are not afraid to speak about victory, to speak about our enemy's defeat. And we cooperate with them in order to bring to the front of the Israeli discourse the voice of those commanders that weren't heard for so many years. And we made sure that they write articles, that they are being hosted in TV shows. We made a video with former IDF commanders from different side of the political map speaking about Israel victory. This video was very popular and also gained us a lot of attention. And the last point I want to mention is the billboards that we've hung in the beginning of the year. We had a campaign toward the first elections in Israel. And in the billboards, we had Ismail Haniyeh and Abu Mazen on their knees, showing like they're being defeated. And the billboard said, you only make peace with defeated enemies. And these billboards made a huge public discourse in Israel. We finally made Israelis to speak again about the Palestinians and victory and the need to defeat. And what happened is that the mayor of Tel Aviv, most of the billboards are in the area of Tel Aviv, and the mayor of Tel Aviv decided that these billboards are not appropriate, and he gave an order to take it down, which was something that got a huge criticism here in Israel, not only because it hurt the right of speech of freedom, but because it also shows how twisted is the mind of some of the Israelis, unfortunately, that doesn't believe that our enemies should be defeated. So what happened is that some of the most known and biggest journalists in Israel wrote about it, wrote about how things change, how people doesn't understand that we have enemies across the border, and that the only way to gain peace here in the area is to show them is that they have no chance. It got a huge attention. I was interviewed to several TV stations, radio stations. In one of the most popular radio stations, I was interviewed with the spokesperson of Tel Aviv, that he compared our billboard. I'm sorry I'm doing this comparison, but he did a comparison between our billboard to what ISIS did to Americans and for a Jewish boy in the Holocaust. And this was something that Israelis just couldn't take. The comparison that the spokesperson of Tel Aviv did between the boy in the Holocaust to Abu Mazen, this was something that Israelis couldn't take anymore, especially after the mayor of Tel Aviv decided to take the signs off. And we decided that we are not going to just let it go without a proper reaction. So we took Tel Aviv council to the court, In the first level, we didn't manage to win this level, but 2 weeks ago we had another. We went up to the higher level, to the Supreme Court, and now we are waiting for an answer. There were three judges in the Supreme Court. From the way that the discussion between the judges went, it seems like two out of the three are against the decision of the mayor of Tel Aviv. And we are now waiting to see what will be the result. Obviously, I hope it will be in the favor of us. I hope I managed to give you a quite interesting review that will reflect our achievements well. I will be more than happy to answer questions and to explain more about what we did. It's been a great year for us, even though COVID-19 made it hard for us. We are dealing with such an important issue, and we managed to bring it to the public and to politicians and to the IDF in a very creative way. And I hope that you'll find the time to stay with us and to support what we do.
All right, thank you so much, Nave. We have quite a few questions coming in. Before we get started, though, can you just define what victory would look like in this case?
I think victory, in the end of it, how it would look like is that Israelis will not have to fear of moving to live in the area around Gaza, an area that until the disengagement was completely quiet. I think peace will look in a way that we will not see soldiers when we drive in areas that are quite peaceful, like the area that Esther Horagant was murdered 2 days ago. This is the way that I see it. I see the peace as something that the same peace we have now with Morocco, with the UAE. The peace with Egypt is not something that I'm willing for. It's a cold peace, but definitely what we see now with Morocco, with the UAE, with Bahrain, this is something that I really hope we will have one day.
Thank you, me too. Regarding the pay to slay, when Bennett was defense minister, our questioner asked, he heard he withheld tax payments to the PA equally to the pay to slay amount, but Gantz reversed this policy with holding the amount. Is this true? And if so, why?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Gantz, for his reasons, did reverse it. He did it because most of his voters are identified with the Israeli left, and they would want to see this money goes to the PLO. So I believe that, I don't know if you know, Israel is going to elections again. So I believe that if there will be a new defense minister that is more identified with the Israeli right, I hope that they will choose again what Bennett did with stopping the salary for terrorists.
Thank you. And what did Kochavi change in military doctrine?
What Kochavi did, it's something which might seem very shallow, but it's not. I'll give you an example. There was an event a few years ago of a group of soldiers, a team that came to events that the Palestinians acted violently, and once the event ended, one of the soldiers stayed there in order to make sure that no one is being hurt from the Palestinian side. And this soldier was murdered by a Palestinian terrorist that drove by. And this soldier that got killed got so much compliments from people in Israel for being such a moral, for staying there to keep the Palestinian and to sacrifice his life. I mean, something in the IDF DNA for some reason changed. It wasn't no more about gaining the victory. It was more about how to end this event or this event in relatively peace way. I'll give you another example. You know what? No, I will stop with this example. What happened in Israel that, as I see it, due to NGO, a human rights organization, and other left-wing organization that pushed the IDF to be more moral, to keep more about the civilian lives of the enemies, to make sure that they don't hurt innocent people, which is something very important, yes. But what happened during the time is that the life of the other became more important than the life of the soldiers and soldiers ourselves, or sometimes even Israeli citizens. And victory became something people don't speak about, because what we need to do is to make sure that nothing happened, that everything stays in the same level, that we don't go into an operation or something, because people might get killed, Palestinians might get killed, Israel will get criticism around the world, and we will be under boycott. And somehow the Israeli DNA changed. I think that in one point, the IDF even convinced itself that the Israeli public won't stand in wars and operation, which is wrong. The Israeli public is very strong when it comes to these points. And Kochavi changed it. Kochavi from the first day spoke about victory and how we need to show our enemies that we are strong. And here I'm getting to my example. 3 days ago, in a junction in the Shomron, a soldier stood in a place where he needs to keep, and the Palestinian came with his car. He went out of his car. He had a bottle. I don't know how to call it in English. A bottle which had things that you throw it in someone, it's burning. And these Palestinians went out of the car. He got closer to the soldier. He was like 2 meters away. He threw the bottle, and the soldier did nothing. He didn't respond. He didn't shoot in the air. He just stood there, took 2 steps away, and that's it. Nothing. The Palestinians went back to his car and drove away. A day after, this soldier lost his job. He was punished for not doing something against this guy, this terrorist. The fact that he didn't try to warn him with shooting into the air, that he didn't even turn the gun toward him, that he even tried to do something. And this is something that I don't think we could have seen a few years ago. The fact that a soldier is being punished for doing nothing.
Wow, that's a great point. So how can there be peace with the Palestinians if they have no set state?
They have no set state?
Yeah, you're making peace with Morocco and the UAE, and they have like the governments, but the Palestinian Authority, is that someone that could potentially work towards peace?
If I understood right, the question is that we could make peace with the Palestinians once they have state?
Yes, I guess that can.
My answer for this is that I think the Palestinians had many chances to have state. and they had many opportunities. Even now, no one stopped them from declaring their state. If Abu Mazen now is standing in Ramallah and saying that he declared a Palestinian state, Israel won't send tanks to Ramallah. They won't send division to Ramallah. The Palestinians don't have state because I think they still have the hope to have our state. And victory is about how you make them lose this hope.
So along those lines, can you describe specific actions that Israel, the IDF, and the government should carry out to advance the goal of victory?
I'll give you an example from Protective Edge operation in 2014. One of the basic things that you have to keep in mind when you fight is to fight quick, to fight fast. This is the way that you have less lost. This is the way that you catch the enemy in a way that he can't respond. This is something that Clausewitz spoke about thousands of years ago. For many years, Israel is part of losing the DNA of victory. Israel has a very long operations. Protective Edge was lasting very long because Israel was afraid to take a big step. So it was a 51 days operation. And what made it end is that in the last days of the operation, Israel bombed a few, I forgot the name in English, a few very high buildings in Gaza, which made the Hamas surrender. So imagine how it could look like if Israel would take this step earlier. How we could end the threat of tunnels from Gaza to Israel if Israel would bomb those areas earlier. Some of these areas are even not populated. Hamas used to dig there without people in the area. Other tunnels will have around people. Israel is used to notify these people before it's doing something. Israel became very, very gentle about the way it's trying to maintain security of its citizens and to gain victory. The problem is that wars and our kind of wars is usually wars that we are being forced for. We are not trying to get to a point where we win. We are trying to get to a point where we just, in the same point we started it. And I think the Israeli government, what it needs to do is to decide. Once they decide they want to gain a victory, they can. The IDF has the ability. It's one of the best armies in the world. As I see it, it's mainly a decision.
So now, how much does worldview of Israel play a part in this gentle nature towards Palestinians?
A lot. I think a lot, especially before the current U.S. administration. A very known sentence that the former security minister, defense minister Bogi Ya'alon said was during Protective Edge, when he said that Israel need to go to a ceasefire because it will give us legitimation in the eyes of the world. Ceasefires are very bad when you are fighting. Soldiers are being killed because obviously the Hamas doesn't respect ceasefires. And to be honest, in the next operation, it will be interesting to see how the world react after we have these agreements with some of the Arab countries. I believe that they will condemn Israel, but even if it will be something it might be something very shallow. they might say to the media and to the public, yes, we condemn Israel, but underneath the table, they will say they have no problem. To be honest, I mean, it does affect Israel. I don't think it will change.
Understood. And why do you think Israel is singled out for this worldview like that versus any other country that would be able to defend themselves?
Wow, it's a very long answer.
Sorry.
Why Israel is being signaled? Double standard. Where do I begin? I think it's a double standard. I think some people, it's very convenient for them to think that if this conflict will end, and then the rest of the problems of the world will end. I remind you that for many decades, we were told that Israel won't be able to achieve peace with other Arab countries as long as there will be no peace between us and the Palestinians. So now we made peace with other Arab countries. Do I think the Europeans now will get convinced that we don't have connection to problems of the world? No. I don't know how deep should I take you in this answer, but I think it's something that is not just an international relationship. It's something about Israel being also a Jewish state. And there are bigger names than myself that spoke about it and explained better than me why Israel is being signaled.
Of course. And for any of our viewers that would like to support the Israel Victory Project, please feel free to go to our website, www.meforum.org/participation, /again. And then in the remarks, notes, and special request box, please just write IVP. Nave, thank you so much for speaking with us today. You gave us a great update on the Israel Victory Project, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And for our viewers, as you finish up your holiday shopping this year, we would like to remind you that we are a part of the Amazon Smile charity program. You can select the Middle East Forum as your charity, and the Amazon will donate 0.5% of the price of eligible purchases to the charity of your choice. So far this year, we have received over $1,000 through this program. And as a reminder, there will be no webinar on Friday because of Christmas. For those of our viewers that celebrate that, Merry Christmas. And thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Nave. Thank you.